You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, I am answering a question from Gaer in the UK. So hello to all of you across the pond listening. So excited to have you all. And Gaer, thank you so much for the email. And her question is about her two children, 3 and 9-year-old boys, both who were adopted separately when they were babies. And they're both starting the play therapy journey. Oh my gosh, Gaer, I'm so happy to hear that you're pursuing play therapy for them. I'm so happy to hear that you're all in on the healing that will come from that. And I'm really excited for your whole family. So that was just a related aside. But they're both displaying anxiety. They're both struggling, acting out in different ways, and it's causing some disharmony in the family. And so I'll read parts of Gaer's email and then I'll share some thoughts. And obviously, we all have things that we recognize are creating disharmony in our families, right? Sometimes it's attitudes, sometimes it's behavior, sometimes it's the way that things are handled, sometimes it's consistent patterns that are taking place within relationships. So I think this will be encouraging to all of us as we understand her scenario a little bit better. So I'll read parts of the email for you. Hi, Brenna. I discovered you a few weeks ago. Welcome. So glad that you found us when looking for information about play therapy and how to better understand it. So as I mentioned, she has two boys aged 3 and 9. And she says both display anxiety, but display it in different ways. And then they both have the effects of early life trauma. Our 3-year-old is at his developmental stage of independence and wanting more control, but with extra! Exclamation point. When upset, frustrated, or angry, his first reaction is to punch, kick, bite, or scratch you. This is generally aimed at our eldest son or myself. He also wants full control of me and does everything to stop me talking to others, but especially my other son. I feel I'm losing connection with both of them. The violence and dysregulated behavior makes me want to disconnect, as I am left feeling useless, unseen, and emotionally hurt. Although I am aware that he isn't trying to be malicious, I guess it's just how it makes me feel. Then I find that I'm not connecting with my eldest because I'm constantly dealing with the youngest. I want to start using the 4 pillars that you talk about, but wonder if I should introduce them one at a time, especially after listening to one of your podcasts about how changing just one thing can impact many things. Also, how do I start to help our 3-year-old understand that his 9-year-old brother is also part of the family and also needs me too? I'm working my way through the podcasts. I'm finding them really helpful. I feel like my main issue is staying regulated in the moment, but I'm working on it. And then in a subsequent email, I want to just highlight a few things that she mentioned. She said, our youngest is turning 4 next week and talked about them both starting on their play therapy journey. And then she said, it is a full family approach that we're embarking on with therapeutic parenting sessions for my husband and I, as well as us joining in and learning some of the play techniques with the boys at different times. We feel this will have a big and positive impact on all of us over the next 12 to 18 months, and we're in it for the long haul. Thank you for all you do and the help you are giving parents to provide solid and stable family units for our kids. Gaer, thank you so much. And I'm very appreciative of your vulnerability, your willingness to let me read that and share this and really help all of us work through these types of things, because these are things that inevitably we all face. So I really do appreciate you not only emailing, but also allowing us to get a little peek into what's going on in your family. So I'm just going to dive into some of the things that I think are really helpful, but I'll kind of tease them for you and then get into them in more specific details. So first and foremost, I think it's really important for us to recognize that your youngest is an externalizer. So we'll look at what that means in just a moment. Power and control is a huge factor in this, so we'll dive into that a little bit more deeply as well. As far as introducing the 4 pillars, yes, you're going to introduce one at a time. So we'll talk through what that would look like. And I think it's important for you to be mindful of the rule of thumb that you need to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. So we'll dive into that a little bit as well. And then finally, you have to be aware of what is driving the behavior that the 3-year-old is exhibiting, not only toward you, but also toward his brother. And I would argue that that's jealousy. So we'll kind of unpack that together as well. The path to calm, confident, and in control parenting starts now. All right. So when we're talking through the behavior of the youngest, and it's interesting, Gaer, because you said that both display anxiety, but you didn't really get into your oldest's behavior at all. So that leads me to believe that your youngest behavior is all consuming, and that's kind of the triage point right now. So obviously, I think your oldest son is also struggling and also probably needs some tips and tricks and strategies so that you can effectively help with some of his behaviors and anxieties. But let's address the youngest, which inevitably I think will then probably help with the oldest as well by default. So here are my thoughts. Let's start with the internalizing and externalizing behaviors. Almost always, when you have same-sex siblings, but even when they're opposite sex sometimes, you have usually an externalizer and an internalizer. And what that means is one is going to feel emotions in a big way and not let anyone know. So they're not going to display any of their emotions. They're not going to talk about any of their emotions. They're really not even going to let themselves feel their emotions very much. They're going to kind of bottle it up and stuff it and try to ignore it and just push it down inside and move on from it and say, okay, this should go away if I just give it enough time. The internalizing kids are just as unhealthy as the externalizing kids, but often it's not in our awareness that it's unhealthy because it doesn't seem like unhealthy behavior. If a kid is quiet and calm and regulated and doesn't pitch fits and doesn't throw tantrums and doesn't yell and doesn't scream and doesn't hurt other people, oh, they're fine. They're not. They're internalizing everything, which is just as unhealthy as the externalizers. But usually, if you have an internalizer in the family, and Gaer, I would argue without knowing it, I think your oldest son is probably an internalizer. Forgive me if I'm making an assumption that's incorrect, but that's where my gut's going with this. So therefore, your 3-year-old has become an externalizer. Because once a role is claimed, the next child will actually assume the opposite role. So if your oldest is an internalizer, almost by default, your youngest will be an externalizer, which is why you get the hitting, the biting, the kicking, the scratching, all of that. Why? Because he's feeling the big, big emotions. He's overwhelmed, just like your oldest is. And let me make this clear. Neither one of them have an emotional vocabulary. Neither one of them have emotional IQ right now. They don't have coping skills. They don't have regulation. They don't have resilience. So they're both flailing with how big these feelings feel to them. But your youngest is going to show you how he's feeling. Your oldest doesn't want anyone to know how he's feeling. So that is why the 3-year-old is behaving the way that he is. He's an externalizer. Neither is better than the other. They're both equally dysregulated. They're both equally unhealthy. It's just a different way of handling emotions. So that at least will help you understand what's going on so that it doesn't seem so personal. He is going to show people how upset he is, how scared he is, how confused he is, how embarrassed he is, how angry he is, whatever's going on. He's going to demonstrate it behaviorally. All right, so that's the externalizing piece of this. Why is he reacting the way that he is? There's also an element of power and control. And you touched on that, Gaer. You said he's wanting more control, but with extra. And when we have a power and control situation, it's in our awareness, or at least it should be, kids don't have control over very much. So therefore, they're going to try to grasp at any measure of control that they can have. And in this case, it's obedience and behavior. So when he's asked to do something or he's expected to do something or something doesn't go his way and it upsets him, he feels powerful and he feels that he has control when he reacts the way that he is, especially when he lords power and control over you and lords power and control over his older brother. Because if he won't let you speak to anybody else, he has the control. If he won't let you interact with his brother, he feels a measure of power. These are power grabs. Again, it doesn't change the situation, but it helps you understand the why. So we have an externalizing child that's power hungry. All right, so that at least sets the stage for understanding what's going on. Now, as far as implementing the 4 pillars, yes, absolutely, you should start implementing them, but one at a time. And the easiest one to start with is always reflecting feelings. So for any of you out there that have been tossing around the idea and considering the notion of starting to implement the 4 pillars in your parenting, do so, but do it in a systematic fashion, one at a time. When I coach parents in the 10-week coaching program, we always start with reflecting feelings, because that is something that you can do all day, every day. And it's something that is actually a precursor to some of the other pillars. So start with reflecting feelings. And Gaer, in your case, both of your boys really do not have an emotional vocabulary right now. So the more you reflect their feelings to them, it will help your oldest actually start to understand feelings and express them effectively. It will help your youngest understand feelings and rein in the externalizing behavior, and he'll actually start to communicate his feelings in more appropriate ways. So they will both find a balance by the fact that you start reflecting feelings. All right. And then I think your question was, I have to go back and actually make sure I'm quoting this correctly. How do I start to help our 3-year-old understand that his 9-year-old brother is also part of the family and needs me too? Okay. So I know I just said you're going to start with only one of the 4 pillars, which is reflecting feelings, but I'm sort of going to break that rule. To answer that specific question, how do I help our youngest understand that the older brother is part of the family and needs me too? You're going to set limits. So I'm going to call your kids Jack and Jim. Okay. Wow, those are both alcoholic drinks, and I didn't mean to do that, but I was thinking of 2 J names and those came out. But we're going with Jack and Jim. Okay. So we have Jack is the oldest, Jim is the youngest. All right. So what you're going to say is, Jim, you really want my attention right now, but I'm talking to Jack, and Jack's my son, and Jack wants me to pay attention to him just like you want me to pay attention to you. You can choose to wait until I'm done, or you can choose to listen to what we're talking about, and then I'll be able to talk to you. And it doesn't have to be those choices. That was just off the cuff. I'm just throwing out scenarios. But notice that you're going to go through the 3 steps of the limit setting process. You're going to reflect his feeling, you're going to set the neutral limit, and you're going to provide choices. So you can choose to wait until I'm done, and then you can choose to tell me whatever you'd like, or you can choose to listen to our conversation, and you can be a part of what we're talking about too, and then I can talk to you. Okay. And those are not absolutes. You could say you can choose to go talk to daddy. You can choose to read a book while I'm talking to your brother, whatever. There's all kinds of alternatives, right? But the point is, you're going to start setting limits. And I'm not saying this is true for you, Gaer. I just know that this is often true for parents. Babies get away with a lot. And I'm not saying that because I'm an oldest child, although maybe a little bit. My brother got away with a ton that I didn't. And I think I might have a little bit of harbored resentment there. But I'm really saying this very neutrally, I promise you. Babies get away with a lot. And we often go, well, you're older, you should know better. Or you know that he's only 3 and he doesn't know yet. And he's not trying to be rude. He's not trying to hurt you. We just have to understand this is where he is developmentally. We make all kinds of excuses for babies. And the reality is he's almost 4. He is fully capable of complying with limits. He is fully capable of understanding boundaries. He is fully capable of owning the outcome of the choices that he makes. So there does not need to be concessions made for the fact that he's little. There does not need to be concessions made for the fact that he's the baby and the older brother is significantly older. You know, a 6-year gap, that changes things. Because if you had a 3 and a 5-year-old, they're much more developmentally aligned. A 9-year-old, it's easy to expect them to be the mature, responsible one. But that's not fair. Accountability works for everyone in the family, including a 3-year-old. So if your 3-year-old, let's go back to Jim, if you give that limit and he still is hounding you and not letting you talk and insisting on your attention and trying to control everything, after you've set a limit 3 times, you move to an ultimate limit, which is Jim, you really want me to talk to you right now, but I'm talking to your brother. If you choose to interrupt one more time, you choose to go to your room for 5 minutes so that I can finish talking to your brother. But if you choose to quietly wait until we're done, you choose to not have to go to your room. Which do you choose? Now, again, that may not be practical. That may not be the ultimate limit that you would give. I'm just throwing out an example. But notice that the outcome is that he is choosing to not be in the room anymore. Therefore, he gets no attention. And he is seeking attention. The control, the power, the jealousy, the refusal to let you have any attention with his brother, it's all for attention. If you take that out of the equation and he chooses, notice that that's very important. You're not forcing him to his room. He's choosing to go to his room. There's no burden on you. There's no guilt, blame, anything. You chose to interrupt, so you chose to go to your room. That's his choice, not yours. You would have chosen for him to stay out there. Okay, so don't own that he needs to own that. But here's the power of that. It takes away all of his attention-seeking ability. If he's in his room, he doesn't have any way to get your attention. Same thing with the physical aggression. If he chooses to be aggressive to you or his brother, it's an ultimate limit after you've set the limit 3 times. Jim, you're really angry and you're trying to show us how angry you are, but we are not for hurting. If you choose to hurt us again, you choose to go to your room. If you choose not to hurt us, you choose to stay out here with the family. Which do you choose? And if he chooses to bite or kick or scratch or hit or whatever else he might do, then you very calmly say, Jim, I see you've chosen to go to your room because you chose to hurt your brother. Now, this falls apart, Gaer, and all of the rest of us. This falls apart if what he chooses is not enforced. So it doesn't matter how big of a tantrum he throws. It doesn't matter how loud he screams. Doesn't matter how long he cries. Doesn't matter what he just tries to destroy in his bedroom. None of that matters. You do not back down on the consequence that he chose. Now, he's just turning 4. He may only be in there for 3 minutes with you looking through the crack in the door to make sure that he's safe. He doesn't have to be fully isolated. But the point is, you enforce the outcome that he chose because it falls apart without you being consistent in enforcing it. So stalwart yourself, prepare yourself, put your armor on, know that it might be disaster, but here's the beauty of this process. When we get to ultimate limit setting with our kids, it only takes once or twice for them to realize, okay, that was not worth it. I'll just stop hitting my brother. So it might be really ugly 1 or 2 times, but it won't be ugly forever. And guess what? He will choose to stop hitting his brother. He will choose to stop hitting you. He will choose to stop interrupting and wanting to have all the power and control. It's self-regulation. You're not forcing him to do it. He's choosing to do it. Why? Because he did not like the outcome that he chose when he chose to go to his bedroom by himself for 3 minutes alone, which to a 3-year-old pretty much feels like an eternity. Okay. And then my final thought. You said that you are working on staying regulated, and that is really difficult, but you're trying. Here's one final thought for you to encourage you. Be a thermostat, not a thermometer. We've talked about that in our rules of thumb. As either one of your boys start to get emotional, so they start to get sad, they start to get excited, they start to get angry, they start to get overwhelmed, it doesn't matter. The gauge is rising or falling, okay? That would be the thermostat, the mercury, right? It's going to increase or decrease. We have a tendency as parents to match that line for line. So as the mercury goes up with the kid, it goes up with us too. As it comes down, it comes down. The goal from the child-centered approach is to be a thermostat. Why? As one gets too hot, we bring it down with our calm. As one gets too quiet and distant and aloof and withdrawn and pulls away, we bring it up a little bit. We serve as the moderator. If something is too cold, we make it a little warmer. If something's too hot, we make it a little cooler. We demonstrate for our kids what it is like to regulate. Notice that a thermostat allows you to change. It allows you to adjust. It allows you to make things more comfortable. Thermometer measures exactly what it is. So if he goes from 0 to 10 in 1.3 seconds, you're right there at 10 with him. Be a thermostat. He ramps to 10, you ramp down to 1. You're cool as a cucumber. You're calm as can be. You fall back on your pillars. You fall back on your reflective responses. Why? You're modeling for him what self-control looks like. You're modeling for him what emotional regulation looks like. You're modeling for him what it looks and feels like to be in control of your behavior. We cannot expect our kids to stay in control if we can't stay in control. That is pretty much impossible. If we are letting ourselves get out of control, how do we ever expect our kids to stay in control? I'm actually going to end with a quote that my staff shared. We have a group chat where we all share things that, well, sometimes it's just fun stuff, but sometimes it's clinical as well. I want to read a quote that was shared with me this week from one of my staff members. And Annalisa Carrillo said this. The quote is, "It doesn't make sense that adults lose control with children for losing control, and then expect children to be able to control themselves when the adult in front of them can't even control themselves." Let me read that again. It doesn't make sense that adults lose control with children for losing control, and then expect children to be able to control themselves when the adult in front of them can't even control themselves. Y'all, that's why we have to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. We show them what self-control looks like. We show them what self-regulation looks like. We show them what moderating the situation looks like. It's observed, it's learned, it's noticed, and then it becomes part of what they do. That's the beauty of the child-centered approach. So, Gaer, thank you so much for the email, and I really, really hope that the play therapy journey is amazing for you all. Thank you for letting me share this. I hope that was helpful to all of us. There are always, always, always struggles when we're dealing with a family. It's just the nature of being part of a family. So I'm always grateful when you all give me some insight into what's going on and you would like some suggestions and thoughts and advice. Happy to provide them. Keep the questions coming. I love to hear from y'all. So grateful for each and every one of you, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.